everyone. Nice to meet you all. My name is Hyobin Lee. I'm from Sewang University Graduate School. I'm also executive member of Korea University Council of Research Ethics. Today, I want to talk about research ethics and research misconduct, focusing on Korean case. Probably you come from different country, so you probably don't know about Korean research ethics and integrity misconduct. Today, I want to compare the research in ethics in Korea and other countries as well. Let's just start with the definition of research ethics. There are two words we can use interchangeably, which is research ethics and research integrity. The research ethics means the values and norms that researchers must know and practice throughout the entire research process. While research integrity means ensuring that the entire research process, proposal, planning, execution, reporting, review, dissemination, and etc. is free from intentional misconduct such as fabrication, falsification, or plagiarism, while upholding the core values of research, including objectivity, honesty, openness, fairness, responsibility, and management. I show that there are two differences between the research ethics and research integrity, but actually there is no difference between the two. We can use these two words interchangeably. But research ethics is broader than research integrity. So if you say research integrity, that means there is no intention research misconduct, such as plagiarism, falsification, fabrication. But when we say research ethics, it's much more broader than research integrity. So it actually not only there is no intentional misconduct, but also it go beyond that. Just there is no research misconduct. Now let's start with the law. I know this is kind of headache, but let's start with law first. So in 2006, there was a huge scandal. Dr. Hwang Woo-seok. So Hwang Woo-seok got involved fabrication and falsification in his research, and that was actually quite incident, not only in Korea but also all over the world in terms of research misconduct. At the time, Korea didn't have any law or regulation related to research misconduct. After Dr. Hwang Woo-seok, we established the law for the first time related to research ethics, that is guidelines for upholding research ethics. This law was first included in Ministry of Science and ICT, but now it transferred to the Ministry of Education. According to the guidelines for upholding research ethics, there are 7 research misconduct. The first one is fabrication, so that means creating data or research results. Even though you don't do tests or you don't conduct any research, you're just making up data or research results. We call this fabrication. And second is falsification, so that means manipulating data or research results. So let's say you conducted a test, and then your result is 2, but 2 is too small to publish. So you change it from 2 to 11, so that is manipulating. So we call this falsification. And third one is plagiarism. The plagiarism means using another person's creative work or idea without proper attribution. So if you do not cite, even though you use someone else's work, we call this plagiarism. And improper authorship, we can say like unfair authorship or improper authorship or inappropriate authorship. So it depends on what kind of word you prefer, but I would put like improper or unfair authorships. That means including authors who made no contributions or excluding authors who contributed, including issues related to minor co-authorship. So I'm not sure whether we are familiar with it or not, but in 2020, I guess, there was a huge scandal that is like many politicians, they list their daughters or sons as a co-author in the article, the paper. So it became a huge issue and it became a huge scandal in Korea. And then that is actually one of the form of improper authorships. Improper authorship is not only that. So for instance, you are friends with someone and then you put your friends as authorship in your paper. We call this improper authorship as well. And unjustified duplicate publication, I mean, this one is also like we can say redundant duplication or duplicate publications or unjustified duplicate publication. In Korean, it's 부당한 중복게재. So some countries do not put unjustified. They just say duplicate publication or redundant publication, redundant duplication. You can use that word. It means that you reusing one's previous work or publishing a similar work without proper citation. That means, for instance, I can give you an example. So, for instance, I published a paper related to economic development and the level of democratic norms. Let's say I published like that way, and then I wanted to publish one more paper, but I had no idea what to publish. So okay, I'll put like more years in that paper, in the previous paper, and I published that. But the result is same, the method is same. If there is no new academic value, then we can call this unjustified duplicate publication or duplicate publication or redundant duplication or redundant publication. So there are a lot of different names like that. And then obstruction of misconduct investigation or retaliation against whistleblowers. So this one is a little bit different from the previous ones, right? So previous ones, it could happen during or before the research start. But obstruction of misconduct investigation is you can get involved this research misconduct if there is investigation started against you, right? So if you get involved research misconduct, then there will be investigation. And then if you try to find whistleblowers or if you retaliate against whistleblower, they can be also considered scope of research misconduct in Korea. And then the other research misconduct can be like if you go to a predatory conference or if you submitted a paper to the predatory community, academic community, we can consider, I'm not saying if you go to a predatory conference or if you publish the paper in a predatory organization, it doesn't necessarily mean that you committed research misconduct, but some universities treat it as research misconduct. And this is the scope of research misconduct defined by guidelines for upholding research ethics. So if you do not get a funding from the Korean government, your work probably apply to guidelines for upholding research ethics. So for instance, you are a graduate student here, and then you didn't get any funding from Korean government. But if you committed research misconduct, then which laws will be applied? This law, guidelines for upholding research ethics. Next is laws and regulations related to research misconduct. There are several different kinds of laws and regulations related to research misconduct. The most important thing that you should know for sure is the top two. So Ministry of Science and ICT, it enacted actually new law called National Research and Development Innovation Act. We call R&D, National R&D Innovation Act, or Innovation Act in short, or Enforcement Decree of the Innovation Act. So two are the same laws and regulation, but the Innovation Act is higher in terms of hierarchy, and then enforcement enforcement decree of Innovation Act is lower than Innovation Act. And then the second thing you should know is Ministry of Education guidelines for upholding research ethics. So we can call guidelines for upholding research ethics or guidelines for ensuring research ethics or guidelines for securing research ethics. So we can use 3 different words, but anyway, so I introduced just before the previous page Ministry of Education, and then I'm gonna explain. I spent quite a long time for Ministry of Science and ICT. So if you get a funding from Korean government, the National Research and Development Innovation Act should be applied. So this law is much broader than the guidelines for upholding research ethics. I'll show you, pretty soon. And Ministry of Trade, Industry, and Energy also has different kinds of regulation. We call this research ethics for industrial technology innovation projects. But since Innovation Act is much higher than this regulation, so most of universities, including Seogang University, follow Ministry the Innovation Act, which was enacted by Ministry of Science and ICT. And Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency has its own regulation. We call this research ethics of the Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency. And Rural Development Administration also has ensuring research integrity in the Rural Development Administration. So if you get funding from these different ministries, so you should follow their own regulation. But you should remember the highest law in Korea related to research ethics is National Research and Development Innovation Act. And then the most important thing after that is guidelines for upholding research ethics. So I introduced guidelines for upholding research ethics first because that was the first law the government enacted for the first time. And I actually show the difference between the Innovation Act and decree and guidelines for upholding. So I know this is in Korean, right? So this one is Innovation Act, and this one is decree, enforcement decree of Innovation Act, and this one is guidelines. So if you compare, this is fabrication, falsification, plagiarism, unfair authorship, and this is duplicate publication, and it's obstruction of investigation. And this one is research fund fraud. So for instance, let's say for one person, there is a certain amount of money that you can spend for one meeting. So for instance, 5 of you will go to the restaurant to have a meeting, then you can spend up to how much? 250,000 won, right? It's 50,000 won per person. So you can use up to 50,000 per person money. But let's say you are 5 of them, and then you spend 300,000 won. So you need one more person, right? Or so you can fake them, right? So there you should write after the meeting is over. You should write what kind of meeting it was, and then what was the purpose of the meeting. So you should actually turn in the paper. But in the paper, since you spent more than 250,000 won, so you lied about 50,000 won. So you just added one more person. So that is actually typical the research fund fraud. If the research fund fraud is way more serious, then you can even go to jail. So this is very serious. Not only just you should pay a fine, but also you could go to jail. So this is very serious crime. But Innovation Act, they emphasize one more time by inserting this article as one of the Innovation Act. And then next one is human rights. So if you study the human being, so let's say you wanted to observed a human behavior's pattern like that, then you actually study the human beings, right? So there is a certain law in Korea, like Bio-Act kind of things. So if you break the law, then it's also the breaking the law of the Innovation Act. The next one is related to safety, the Biosafety Act. And these two laws are specifically related to if you are studying biology or psychology or medicine like that, or if you study something dangerous one, then it's highly related to that law. But if you're not, then it's not that related. And then this one, I wanted to emphasize. I'll explain later on. It's written in English as well in the next slide. Let's say you got a funding from Korean government, and then you studied it in Korea, but you wanted to get a job after you graduation, right? And then you want to go back to your country after you get a master's or PhD. So, but that is totally okay. I'm not saying that is wrong, but since you want to get a job, so you need to co-work with your professors in your home country, let's say. And then your home professor from your home country say, why don't you send some your research data? Because I'm curious, like that. But without permission, if you just send this data, you infringe or break this article. This means is that unjust, so you cannot have your research data and result without approval. So let's just say if you get a funding, then all your data that you produce, all your research results actually belong to the university, not you. So ownership is not yours, but you can actually claim about authorship. So you can be an author, but you cannot be an owner. So if you break out the ownership, so this is I'll just translate as it is, research result unjustified ownership. So you cannot have research result without permission. So if you break that, then also it's break the Innovation Act. And then later on is research security. So if your research is classified, then you cannot write a paper or you cannot present your paper without permission because that research is classified. But if you break that, then also it breaks the Research Innovation Act. And then this one is important when you apply research funding. So probably you are highly interested in applying funding, right? So let's say you apply funding to National Research Foundation of Korea. And then, so let's say you probably should write research proposal, right? And then let's say you wrote a research proposal in 2016, but you couldn't get funding. So you want to use the same research proposal in 2020. Is that right or not? It's totally fine. It's like same like you wrote a paper for a certain academic journal and you submitted it, but you failed to publish, then you can publish the same articles to another journal, right? So it's like that. But if you committed any research misconduct in your proposal, then it's also one of the misconduct defined by Innovation Act. And then the etc. So DBD8 Act that the academic community can accept. So this is like I gave an example that, for instance, you go to conference, predatory conference, or you submitted paper to the predatory organization. We might think that this is not okay, right? So this is like other kinds of research misconduct. Then let me explain clearly about Innovation Act. So I actually kind of explained briefly, but this is much more deeper than the previous one. So according to Innovation Act, Article 31, we call this prohibition of misconduct related to national R&D project. So when you conduct R&D project, you shouldn't commit these following ones. If you commit it, and then that is break the Article 31, you should pay fine, and you cannot conduct national R&D project anymore. So that's the kind of law. The first one is related to research misconduct: fabrication, falsification, plagiarism, improper authorship. I'll explain very detailed all of this, but this is the one of the category. And second one is misuse of research funds. So I call like research fund fraud. So violation in use of research and development fund. So there is always standard whether you can use this money or not, or how much you can spend. But if you violate that, then it's included, or it belongs to Article 31. And research security, so unauthorized possession or transfer of research outcomes to a third party. So I explained that, like, give an example that if you send all kinds of research data or research result to your professor in your home country, I said it's not okay, right? It's because of Innovation Act 31. And disclosure or request of confidential information in classified research project. I'm kind of not sure whether you can be a member of classified research projects because it's classified, it's not easy. Even for professors, it's not easy to get a classified research project. But if you leak the information, or like let's say, even though you go to a conference, or if you write a paper without permission, then this is also a violation of an Innovation Act 31. And application and conducting of research misconduct, and then during application and conducting of research project, if you committed any research misconduct or misconduct, then there is also a violation of Innovation Act 31. Applying for conducting research project through flood means, so this is one of the application process. And Article 56 of Enforcement Decree of Innovation Act. So Enforcement Decree is lower than Innovation Act. So Innovation is the highest act. And the Enforcement Decree of Innovation Act is lower than the Innovation Act per se, but it's actually the same one. So the Enforcement Decree give a more specific definitions, or what to do, how to do, kinds of law. According to the, so if you look up 56, it's also defined misconduct. It shows that research misconduct, so it's the same: fabrication, falsification, plagiarism, improper authorship, and misuse of research funding. On bioethics and safety environment, so I explained, if you study human beings, then you need to approve from IRB, right? And Safety Act, and other acts of harming or retaliating against whistleblowers. So it's actually very similar to the guidelines of upholding research ethics, right? So according to the research ethics, there are 7 different kinds of research misconduct. And then if you compare this one is the same, right? Fabrication, falsification, plagiarism, improper authorship. And this one is not same. It's only here, Innovation Act. And bioethics, and the Safety Act, Safety Environment Act, all this one are new in Innovation Act, but this one is same. Other acts of farming or retaliation against whistleblower. And then there are one more articles which is directly related to research ethics, but it doesn't define misconduct. That is Article 58 of the Enforcement Decree of Innovation Act. So according to Article 58, it actually designated what to do for the institution. So not yourself, but the university. Luckily, so since you're a student of Seogang University is one of the top universities in Korea, right? So it actually has good governance system, and it has all kinds of regulations and everything. But let's take a look. So first one, the university should have research ethic governance. So institution has specific laws which are established systems for verifying research misconduct and ensuring research ethics. So Seogang University has systems. If there is research ethic violation, you can actually report it, and then if you report, then the university will investigate. And the university also should have research ethics in academic exchange. It sounds kind of weird, but it means that university should have the regulation related to journal submission or conference participation. So this actually article want to prevent the researchers from going to or attending to or submitting to the papers to predate journals. And the rest one is fostering research culture, so addressing issues such as power abuse, sexual violence, and human life violation. Since you are international students, I probably think that you have a lot of difficulties when you talk to your advisor or when you talk to your colleagues. So if you have any problems, you can go to a foreign students international center in Seogang University. Then they will guide you where to go or how can you request counsel, like that. And let's talk about the real thing from now on. So from starting, I want to start with fabrication and falsification. So if you go any other country in the world, the research misconduct starts with a definition of research misconduct. Well, at least it has three things. The first thing is fabrication. Second thing is falsification. The third thing is plagiarism. The U.S., it's kind of, they define the research misconduct in a much narrower than South Korea. So according to U.S. Law, there are only three research misconduct, which is fabrication, falsification, plagiarism. So this means these three things are the most serious research misconduct in research ethics field. Fabrication means the act of falsely creating non-existent data, materials, or result. The falsification, it means that the act of modifying or deleting existing research data, materials, or result. Both of them are very serious forms of research misconduct. Let me give you an example of fabrication. So Hwang Woo-seok is famous for gene, right? So he made up like stem cell, and he kind of duplicate the gene. So there were famous the animals that he did. So for instance, like he copied, I can't remember exactly, but dog, and pig also, and cow. There are such things, but we never actually proved that he actually experiment these ones because there was no lab notebook. So we couldn't find any lab notebook that support that the Hwang Woo-seok actually conducted this test and research. So we might think that that is fabrication. So according to the Korean law, it designated that the Hwang Woo-seok get involved fabrication and falsification. Fabrication because of this fake test. And falsification, so stem cell that Hwang Woo-seok found was only 2. But when he published the paper in Science Journal, 2 cannot impress the reviewer, right? So he changed the number from 2 to 11 in Science Journal. So he committed falsification. So with this one, I think probably you can distinguish between the two. How to actually prevent fabrication and falsification? The most important thing is research data, materials, and results must be collected and recorded as data. This is very important. So for instance, you conduct a survey and some respondents, they do not finish the questions sometimes. Then you should have made it up, right? Or you can't just get rid of that respondent just because it didn't finish the response. You should kept these answers survey as it is, and then later on you should get rid of some respondent that doesn't fit into your research question or research goal. Otherwise, you can never prove that you actually conducted a survey or you actually conducted research. And all data must be recorded and stored exactly as they were collected. And if you change it, then you should leave it as it was, original data, and then you should make a copy of it. And then this one, second one, is I sort by my research result or goals. The source of the data must be accurately cited, and the data must be collected through legitimate method. So if you buy illegal cats or rats for the experiment, that's not okay. Even though the result shows fantastic, but it doesn't really matter. Your research will be nullified. A researcher should not subjectively judge the value of data and store or retrain it accordingly. So since you are in a learning process, you don't know which data is valuable or not. So when you choose the value of the data, so it should be applied academic standard. So how about my academic field? Is it outlier, or should you get rid of outlier or not? Like that. And then when translating or interpreting data, objectivity must be maintained to prevent biased result. So I know you want to have certain kind of results. So for that, if you translate it or interpret it as you wanted or as you favored, so this can be also fabrication or falsification. The removal of non-pure data or an outlier must be based on widely accepted academic standards and expert judgment. So this is very important. So when you do statistics, you can feel, you know how it means, right? So for instance, if I get rid of a certain controlling variable, then you can get p-value that you want. But you can't just get rid of controlling variable just because of that reason. So for that, you need academic standard and academic judgment. And deleting unfavorable data to lower the p-value within the value range, typically 0.05, constitutes falsification. So as I explained, so if you wanted to get a certain value, p-value, so that was lower than 0.05. So if you get rid of controlling variable, or if you add the controlling variable without academic standard, that can be also falsification. And always store and keep evidence materials that can submitted at any time and create copies. This is very important. So these days, journal reviewers, they want evidence as it is. So if you wanted submit it to journal of your paper, then you should keep all kinds of evidence materials. And then maintain and disclose raw data to prepare for potential allegation of falsification. So let's say someone report your work, so you have to prove that you actually conducted your experiment. Then you need to have raw data to prove that you conducted actually. And diligently record research note. We can call research note or lab notebook or research notebook. So, and ensure that data storage and preservation prevent any modification. So if you confuse, if you write laboratory note, lab notebook, then you can check anytime, right? If the number is weird, you can check again like that. So you always have to write lab notebook and record all the objective facts in detail and accurately without fabrication or falsification. That's very natural things to do. And the research process and result should be documented in a way that allows third parties to replicate them. The most important reason that you write lab notebook is that someone else's within the same situation and same condition, they should replicate as you did, and the result should be the same. So that's replicatable, right? So the research should be conducted like that way. So that's why we write lab notebook. And the last, if modifying records of or attaching additional materials, the person making the changes must sign and date them. So when you write a lab notebook, but if you made a mistake or if you have to change it, then you should sign and you should write the date. And I want to introduce a case that related to fabrication and falsification that happens one of the best universities in Korea. The professor was very famous in that field, and she or he, I can't say. Anyway, let's say he wrote articles, a lot of articles from 2009 to 2016 and 12, so about 14 papers, right? And then the graduate student actually wrote a manuscript, and then the graduates transfer the paper to the professor. And the professor actually revised the paper. So professor is the last person who revised the manuscript. And then he sent it to the journal. The process was like that. But the graduate student found something weird because the manuscript he gave and the published paper, he compared these two. But there's a lot difference in the figure and tables. And data actually has been changed by a professor. So he thought it's weird. So he collected all kinds of data and then sent it to the journal. And the journal actually noticed that he fabricated and falsified. So the journal actually retracted all the paper, all 14 papers. And then the problem started from here. So after journal retracted the paper, there is a site called Retraction Watch. So Retraction Watch site actually sometimes wrote a story related to the research retraction or research misconduct. So one day it became hot potato. So the research Retraction Watch actually wrote stories about him. And then it became the important issues that university. So the university actually started to investigate and realized that the professor conducted research misconduct. But the thing is, professor saying, "Oh, it's not what I did; it's my graduate student did." But luckily, every graduate student says that they gave the paper to the professor, and the professor actually fixed it and revised it and submitted it. So that's why the professor got fired. Professor got fired from the university. Next is plagiarism. So what is plagiarism? Plagiarism is the act of deceiving by presenting someone else's idea of writing tables or images as one's own without proper citation. So if you use someone else's ideas, text, writing, tables, images, and everything, if you do not cite, then we call this plagiarism. The plagiarism, you think that it's easy to understand, but there are so many different kinds of plagiarism. Let's take a look. Number one is idea plagiarism. So using another person's original ideas, research a concept or analytical framework, method, or structure of the paper, then we should cite. If you do not cite, we call this idea plagiarism. And second is text plagiarism. Text plagiarism, there are a lot of different kinds of text plagiarism here. So text plagiarism means using all or part of published work without citation, either verbatim or with altered wording. So let's say the verbatim plagiarism. So verbatim plagiarism means directly copying words or sentence without a published work, without quotation mark or proper citation. So for instance, you wanted to take sentence as it is. So let's say I wrote an article and then you read my article and then you wanted to get a sentence as it is. You don't change a word. So let's say let's learn research ethics in the AI era. If you wanted to take that, then you should put quotation mark. So if you do not put quotation mark, then it's something wrong. But not only you put quotation mark, but also you put citation. So two are needed. So quotation mark and citation. And second is paraphrasing plagiarism. So sometimes, you have to read a lot of previous work. And then when you read previous work, you need to paraphrase, right? So you don't use directly the sentence. So even though you paraphrase, you reword another person's research while maintaining the same core ideas and arguments without citation. We call this paraphrasing plagiarism. So even though you reword another person's research, if you maintain the same core idea, then you have to cite. And patch writing, or we call this mosaic plagiarism, so means that combining text from multiple sources without citation, making it appear as an original work. So let's say you take some from A work and take some from B work, and you put it together as an original work. If you present as an original work, we call this patch writing. And sample plagiarism, I will introduce sample plagiarism more on redundant publications. We call this sample plagiarism redundant publication in the same way. So reusing one's previously published work on a small or large scale. So publishing the same manuscript in two different journals also can be sample plagiarism. And unauthorized use of tables, graph, data, figures. So using table, graph, data, or figures without citation and presenting them as one's own works, we call this plagiarism. So if you use tables, graph, data, figures, you have to cite. And secondary source plagiarism means, let me read first and then explain. Citing an original source without directly renewing it, instead taking the reference from another work. So this is like this. So for instance, you are reading the article from Dr. Lee, from my article. So I wrote that paper in 2012. And then I must also cited a lot of works. So let's say within my article, I also cited from Kim Chol-soo in 2000. But if you wanted to cite the Kim Chol-soo's argument from Hyobin Lee, so what name you should put? So that's actually the question, the very important question. You have to put Kim Chol-soo in 2000. That's the right way to cite. But the problem is when you put Kim Chol-soo, then you should check whether Kim Chol-soo really argued this one or not. But if you wanted to check it, but you couldn't check it because it's written in Korean, you don't speak Korean, let's say, or it's written in Japanese, so you could find it, but you can't justify or you can confirm this is the right one, then you should put both names. So let's say Kim Chol-soo 2000, Hyobin 2012, like that way. So this is, but if you don't check Kim Chol-soo, you just put the name of Kim Chol-soo instead of both names. We call this second source plagiarism. And the last one is excessive citation. So even if the source is cited exceeding the academically acceptable range of direct uses. So for instance, my work is very similar to Kim's work in 2019, let's say. So I cited Kim 2019, Kim 2019 like that way. But if my work is more like similar, like more than 50%, then the readers don't have to read my article like that way, right? So it's better for reader to read Kim's article than me. So I didn't contribute to the research that much. So my work is not necessary. So this one also called excessive citation, which is one of the form of plagiarism. Ghostwriting means a severe case of ghost authorship are also considered plagiarism. That means ghost authorship means someone else is actually write your paper instead of you. We call this ghostwriting, and ghostwriting can be considered as plagiarism. To prevent plagiarism, so plagiarism can be prevented by accurately citing source and keeping quotation within appropriate range. It is important to correctly distinguish between direct and indirect quotation. So direct quotation method, directly quoting the original text word for word. So I said if you want to directly quote, then you need quotation mark and citation. And proper secondary citation. So I talked about secondary citation, 김철수, 이효빈, right? So you should cite it like this. So if you wanted to keep two names together, like this. Saying Sanctuary 2012 and cited in Kim Chul-soo in 2012, page 5. So this is a wide way to cite secondary citation. So even if sources are properly cited, excessive quotation can still be considered plagiarism, so caution is necessary. So as I said, if my citation is more than like 50% is by Kim, then readers don't have to read my article. So I didn't contribute at all. So that's why it can be considered plagiarism. And citing a primary source when the only referring a secondary source constitutes secondary source plagiarism. I explained what is secondary source plagiarism. And when quoting multiple sections from the same reference, each quote section must include the proper citation. So it's like this. So this sentence is from Kim, and next sentence also Kim. Some students just put Kim once because he thinks that or she thinks that this is the right way. I revealed the name, original author's name anyway, but this is not the right way to quotate or citation. So for that, every sentences that if you cite it, then you should put citation. And before submitting a manuscript, using plagiarism detection software can actively help prevent plagiarism. So since if you're interested in published paper in SCI, I strongly recommend turning it in. And if you're interested in submitting a paper to KCI, I strongly recommend it KCI.go.kr or CopyKiller. So the Sogang University has a CopyKiller software program, so you can check how much plagiarism detection rate. If it is high enough, then you should change and you should go back to the paper and you should check. When translating and using someone else's work, proper citation must still be provided. So some students, since you are international, I don't think that would happen, but if you use different language, sometimes you don't cite properly. That's also plagiarism. And this is how to cite, so direct quotation method, or this is indirect quotation, the paraphrasing. So this is original work. If you want to take it, then you cite, and you should provide citation. And if you change the word, but you don't have to put quotation mark, but you have to provide citation. And this is the types of plagiarism that occur during 2016 to 2020. The 70%, more than 70% is that you just don't cite. And second one is second source citation, second source plagiarism. And next one is you just put, so as I explained, if you cite it sentence by sentence, you should provide all kinds of citation, but you just put the one name. That's not okay. So this one is this kind of plagiarism. And then after you translate, if you do not provide source, then that's also citation, the plagiarism. This one is, I'll show the example of this one. It's hard to explain. So the first one, I know it's Korean, but let's look at 2003, and then it says 참여정부. So 참여정부 is here. So from here to here, it takes source from Kim Yun-soo, but it didn't provide any citation. So this is the plagiarism. And second one, it says that this introduction I take from Yeon Won-ho in 2020. This is also considered as plagiarism, even though you provide source, but this is too much. So all introduction you take from Yeon Won-ho, this is excessive plagiarism. So this is not okay. And if you look at this one, the secondary source plagiarism. So the first source is the consulting group, but this author did not look up the Boston Consulting Group, and then it just provides Boston Consulting Group. And this is the typical secondary source plagiarism. And this one is, if you look at this sentence, and all take from just one source. It's 한국 벤처창업학회. In that case, you should provide all citations every sentence. So for instance, here, 한국 벤처창업학회, this is right, but this one also take from 한국 벤처창업학회, but it didn't provide right source. This is considered as plagiarism. Let me introduce just one case of plagiarism. So this one is people do not think that this proposal matters, but this one is related to research proposal. So there are researcher A wrote a research proposal, and she actually showed her research proposal to her colleague, and the colleague actually looked up the research proposal. And then he wrote 2 papers from it. Of course, there is no research result, but you can actually take from literature review, or there are some new ideas. And based on that, they published 2 papers. And then actually A found out later on, oh, he took mine and then published 2 papers. So she actually reported that, but at first university declined to investigation, because the university thinks that this is only research proposal. There is no research result or outcome, so why should I investigate? But National Foundation of Korea actually warned the university, saying that when we talk about proposal, there is no limitation to only the published paper. So it can be also included research proposal and other things, or like conference paper. So university actually accept the National Research Foundation of Korea's warning, and they start to investigate, and then it turns out the judgment determined as plagiarism. So you should be very careful when you write research proposal, and research proposal can be also the scope of research misconduct. And then let's talk about authorship. So authorship matters a lot for promotion or get a job. So proper recognition of contribution to research output is a fundamental role for fair distribution of achievement with the research community. Violating this rule can be determined to integrity of research community. So let's say since your friend's friend's father is a professor, so your friends just be an author just because her father is a professor. This is unfair, right? So authorship matters a lot, but who is author? That's the most important. The author is someone who has made significant intellectual or academic contribution at all stages of research. While the definition of significant intellectual or academic contribution may vary by discipline, it is universally required that an author has intellectually or academically contributed to the creation of research outcome. So when we talk about author, so author should be contribute to the research intellectually or academically. But let's say I interpret from Korean to English. Can I be an author? No, I can't. I contribute to paper per se, but I did not contribute intellectually or academically. Of course, when we say intellectually, academically, it can be different what kinds of field you are belong to, but it's pretty sure that without you, without he or she, it's impossible to publish the paper. That can be author. There are three different kinds of author, right? The first author, co-author, corresponding author. First author can be, we can say, principal author, lead author, like that. The first author, I think the first author contribute most. The researcher who collect and conduct experiment on data, for instance, plays a crucial role in generating data. The individual who interpret the result and draft the manuscript. If the research was conducted collaboratively, multiple individuals can be designated as first author. So first author means actually you contribute the most to the project. But at the same time, you have to generate research, and at the same time, you have to write the manuscript. The co-author also contribute, but not as much as the first author. Co-author means a researcher who actively participate in research process along with the first author, contributing significantly to data collection, analysis, interpretation, conclusion, and manuscript writing. So co-author did not contribute as much as the first author, but the co-author should write a paper and collect data, analyze, and interpret the conclusion or research result. The last is corresponding author. Corresponding author usually like professors, your advisor, want to be corresponding author. But corresponding author should contribute the research for sure. But beside that, corresponding author should contribute for one more thing. So the author responsible for submitting the manuscript for publication in the journal. So who correspond? That's the important. Corresponding author should be correspond to the journal and between the author. So must be available to communicate with the publisher, readers before, during, and after publication. So let's say if the paper has a problematic, then the first person that the publisher contact with is corresponding author. So professors want to be corresponding author, but if professor didn't contribute at all to the research, then he or she cannot be a corresponding author. Let's talk about authorship by research stage. The first, research planning and design. A researcher who plays a crucial role in initiating the study by designing the research, determining the methodology, setting up concept, or developing new research resources, for instance, creating new statistical data, formulating new hypotheses, developing research-related materials or invention. We can call this one as author. But someone who supports the research by securing or providing funding or by supplying pre-existing research sources but does not actively participate in research process, we can call them contributor. So if when you submit a paper, you should write author, right? And then in the author section, you should provide what kind of roles you did. But there is contributor section, and then in contribution section, so you should write what this person contribute. So this is the stage of research planning and data. Research execution, so another word, research conduct. So conduct data analysis and interpretation, drives conclusion, and actively participate in research execution. So we can call this person as an author. And contributor performs repetitive tasks as a technician. So in some department, there is a technician, and technician doesn't know what is going on, and they doesn't know what exactly this test means. So we call this one, we can call technician. And some department or some academic field do not list technician as an author. So, like for instance, I wanted to conduct a survey research, but I can't do survey by myself because I don't have time. So I ask the research agency, or I use firms that specifically conduct a survey instead of me. That firm, we cannot list the firm as an author. So it's like a technician. The technician or the firm, we can put them as a contributor section and provide only advice or supervision without directly engaging in research activity. So we can also put this person's contributor. And research reporting means you write paper. So drive research results, write manuscripts and reviews and revise manuscripts. So that's what authors should play. All authors are responsible for research integrity and must respond to editors and readers' questions or concerns regarding the research findings. So that's what authors should do, these things. And research supervision and in management, the train and educate researchers directly involved in research projects, actively participate in the research, drive meaningful outcome. So if you're a professor, train you really hard, and let's say like he or she got funding from the government and conduct research project, and then they give you roles to you, and they check whether you play that role or not, and then check the data that you produce is right or not. So that's actually directly involved in the research project. This person, she or he, can be a corresponding author, and then they can be author. But someone who trains and educates researchers but does not contribute directly to the research process, we cannot call them a contributor, not author. So if you write a paper, then there's author section and there's a contributor section. So author section, you should write author only. And then some journals actually ask what kind of author you play for this paper. So you should write that. And then there is a contributor section. And then in the contributor section, so you should write what kind of this contributor contribute to the paper. So this is authorship. So let's talk about improper authorship or unfair authorship. So I said there are a lot of different kinds of names: inappropriate, improper, unfair. The definition of improper authorship as defined in the guidelines for upholding or insurance research ethics. So improper authorship refers to the act of either 1. Granting authorship to an individual without justifiable reason, either when they did not contribute or make any meaningful contribution to the research. 2. Excluding an individual from authorship despite their substantial contribution to the paper. So there are only 2 different kinds of improper authorships, but you have to look at the 3 things, types of improper authorship. Number 1, A, granting authorship to someone who did not contribute to the research content or result. Second, failing to grant authorship to someone who did not contribute to the research content or result. Third, number C, important a lot. Publishing or presenting a student's thesis, so dissertation or thesis, under the advisor's name alone in academic journals or conferences. So this is very important because you are writing a dissertation or thesis. So let's say you are a master's student and then you graduated and then you're a professor, write a paper based on your thesis or dissertation without you. That is actually can be categorized number C. So if that happened, it's improper authorship, no matter what. So even though you gave up the paper, or if you are not interested, but still it's not okay. So he or she, so your advisor, will get punished by it. So this is improper authorship. In case of improper authorship in academic papers, so when intellectual contributions was made, but the author was not credited, so there are two different things. One, actually it's one. We call this ghost author. So someone else wrote the paper, but was not was not listed as author. So we call this one ghost author. Ghost authorship is considered a form of plagiarism. And when someone was credited as an author without intellectual contribution, so there are four different author, the improper authorship. So one is coerced author, so a professor or senior researcher pressure a junior researcher or student to include them as an author due to their authority. So for instance, your advisor or your senior came to you and say, oh, I heard you are writing a paper, why don't you list me as an author? So this is coercive author. You don't want to put her or him, but just because he or she is more powerful than you, he or she used his power for that, so we call this coercive author. And honorary also is vice versa. So researchers add their name to the author list to enhance credibility or as a form of reciprocation. So let's say you are not that famous in the field yet, but you want to publish a paper. So you just wrote very famous author's name in your paper. Then this is honorary author. And then third one actually occur pretty often. Mutual support author means two or more researchers agree to release each other as an author in their respective paper, regardless of actual contribution. So let's say you and your friend make the promise that why don't you put our names for each other's paper? And then there's always one who betrayed, right? So you shouldn't trust your friends for this matter. And gift author means someone is added as an author for personal reasons despite not contributing to the research. For instance, you put your boyfriend's name as an author, so we call this a gift author. Or you put your friends or your mother, whatever the reason is, but you just wanted to thank you, or you want to show your respect, so you just want to put he or she, her or his name, so we call this gift author. And the issue of minor co-authors, so as I explained earlier, there was huge issues related to minor. So some politicians, they list their minor, the children, as a co-author, so it became a huge issue in Korean society. The inclusion of underage co-author is highly likely to be a form of gift authorships. So let's say the minor, he or she worked really hard, and then if she or he is deserved to be an author, it's not a gift author. And this is Seoul National University AI plagiarism case, and then there was an AI team, and then that team was quite famous, and then that team presented paper in 2021 in the conference. And then later on, it turns out that paper was plagiarized. Or certain paper, but the problem was the professor. The professor was corresponding author, but professor said, "Oh, I had no idea at the time." But because first author put plagiarized without my permission. So let's take a look. Seoul National University AI plagiarism case. So in 2021, there was an AI team in Seoul National University, and they presented a paper at the conference. And then it turns out in 2022, paper was plagiarized. The problem was the corresponding author. The first author was a PhD student, and then the corresponding author was a professor. And the professor said that I did not realize it was plagiarism because I modified the existing content without obtaining consent from the co-authors before submitting the paper to the conference. So the corresponding author is not just because he or she the advisor. The most important thing to be a corresponding author, you should actually contribute as a corresponding author. So you should write a paper, and you should at least certain for the integrity of the paper. But in this case, professor just say, oh, I had no idea, and then I just modify the existing content. That's actually not okay, and then that is not a right role as a corresponding author. And then authorship, I don't want to talk about much, but I just wanted to show a few cases which are matters for your category. So, this one. So, what happened if your co-author, co-worker died or leave? That's the problem. So, let's say you had a colleague, and then he contributed a lot, and then certainly he transferred to another university. In that case, the best way is that not to use his result. So as I said, research result was owned by the university. So technically, you can use that result, but because that ownership actually goes to the university. But if you call or try to contact, but they did not answer or they did not respond, he or she did not respond, in that case, the best way is not to use. But if you want to use the research result, then you have to pretty sure that you have to list she or he as a co-author or corresponding author or first author. So this is very important as long as you use his or her research result. And let's talk about redundant publication. So after I explaining redundant publication, I'll finish the first section. So definition of unethical or improper, inappropriate, unjustified. So we can put a lot of different kinds of names there. Unethical duplicate publication, redundant publication in research ethics guidelines. What is unethical duplicate publication? So it refers to researcher publishing the same or substantially similar research result multiple times without proper citation, while receiving research funding or claiming multiple research achievement leading to unfair advantages. So you have to meet two conditions here. The one is failure to properly cite. So if previous research is republished without clear citation, is considered self-plagiarism. And second is unfair advantage. So if a researcher received additional research funding or claimed multiple research achievements from essentially the same work, it constitutes research misconduct. So redundant publication. So redundant publication, if you look at the definition, you have to meet two conditions, right? So first, failure to properly cite. Second, unfair. You should receive unfair advantages. But the problem is, how should we define unfair advantages? So let's say you did not properly cite the previous work, but you did not receive any additional funding, or you did not claim as a research achievement, but still you might get unfair advantages. So for instance, you became famous for that, or your advisor liked you because you he or she thinks that you're diligent. So in that case, we can say that is also unfair advantages, right? So in this sentence, the most important thing is the first one, failure to properly cite. So if you fail to properly cite the source, then it can be considered a duplicate publication. So example of unethical duplicate publication. So one paper is artificially split into two separate publications to inflate research output or gain extra credits or funding. We can call this unethical duplicate publication. So what is the, let's elaborate more on this redundant publication. So using one's previously published work without proper citation or without permission from the publisher, publishing a new paper that contains minor modification or additional content but has no significant difference in analysis or conclusion from the previous work. So we call this situation as a redundant publication. So let's say you added something or you get rid of the previous one and publish it again. So that is redundant publication. And so if that means actually there is no new academic value in the new paper. In that case, we call this redundant publication. Redundant publication has a lot of different kinds. The first one is salami slicing. Salami slicing means that the practice of dividing one substantial study into multiple smaller papers to increase number of publications. So for instance, you are writing a dissertation or thesis. That is pretty long. So after your graduation, you want to write a paper. But in that case, you can split it into many, many papers. But if you can publish within one paper, but just because you want to increase your publication, number of publication, that is salami slicing, means that duplicate publication. And augmented publication or overlapping publication definition means that is that the act of adding extra data or minor modification to previously published paper and presenting it as a new research article. So this is the types of redundant publication. And mosaic plagiarism and methodological plagiarism in research ethics. So this is also kinds of redundant publication. So let's say mosaic plagiarism is practice of copying sections from multiple previous works and piecing them together to a new form of paper without proper citation. So we actually have learned mosaic plagiarism in the plagiarism section. This also can be considered a redundant publication. And methodological publication. So reusing the exact same research methodology again and again from the prior study, but applying to it slightly different research subject without proper acknowledgement. So it doesn't. You shouldn't misunderstand this sentence. So let's say I'm majoring political science. In political science, we use same research method again and again, quantitative or qualitative. There are only two kinds of research method. So if I use the same research method again and again, is that redundant publication? It's not. But the important thing is like this. So you found a new kind of research method that is very new and no one actually used it before. So because of that research method, you published the paper. In that case, if you change the subject but use the same research method again and again, then that we called redundant publication. So you shouldn't be confused. And then translating Laotian publication. So since you are from different countries, so you probably speak more than one language. So practice of translating research paper from one language to another and publishing it without proper citation or without publisher consent, we call this redundant publication. Translating a Korean research paper to English, or in your case, English to Korean or Japanese to Korean, like that. And this we call this duplicate publication. But it is okay to publish, if it is okay to, sometimes even though it's the same research, you can republish again. So we call this a secondary publication. Some cases are okay. So, however, if some previous research results are used, if substantial new academic values is added, it cannot be considered improper duplication. So this is duplicate publication, but it's not improper or unethical. So for example, translating a Korean language paper into English and publishing it on international academic journal is acceptable. The important thing is this. If permission is obtained from the previous journal and approval is granted by new journal for republication, it is not considered improper duplicate publication. So the important thing is this, you should cite. So this paper, it was published in Korean first in 1999, but I republished and translated and republished here in 2000, like that. If you cite it, it is okay. And however, since two papers contain the same content, they are regarded as a single academic achievement. So you should claim just one academic achievement instead of two. But let's say you translate it into another language, and then you claim this is two different academic achievements. This is also not okay, plagiarism, no, redundant publication. And then if you do not cite, that's also redundant publication. And when publishing dissertation as a journal academic, that is totally fine. So Sagang University actually encourage this one. So if you write a dissertation, and then based on that dissertation, if you wanted to publish a paper, academic journal, that's totally fine. And vice versa, it's fine, but you should need approval from your committee member. So if research content is first published in academic journal and later incorporated into a dissertation, is not considered improper duplicate publication, as long as proper citation and attribution are provided and approval is obtained from advisor and dissertation committee. And when publishing a report as a journal article, this is also not redundant publication. So if a journal research report funded by an institution is to be published as a journal article, it's necessary to check whether report contains confidential information and obtain approval from the institution. With institutional approval, it can be published as a journal article provided that proper citation and attribution are included in the paper. So that means totally fine. So it is okay to write a report and submit that to journal article. It's totally fine. And when publishing a conference paper as a journal article, that is also fine too. So a paper presented at a conference can be published in an academic journal. However, the journal article must include the date of presentation and the name of the conference. So as long as you provide two information, so you can publish a paper to the journal article, even though that paper was presented in the conference. I think that's all. So far I talked about law first, right? So we talked about guidelines enacted by Ministry of Education and the Innovation Act enacted by Ministry of Science and ICT. And then we talked about different kinds of research misconduct. So fabrication, falsification, improper authorship, and redundant publications. So I think the Korean research misconduct is much more broader than any other country in the world. So you should be very careful when you conduct research. I hope this would be helpful for your graduate school. Thank you.